I took the job because it seemed simple. Technical cleaning at a decommissioned research station, 3 weeks in the Canadian Arctic, housing included, no human contact required. Preventive maintenance, they called it. Just keep the systems running. The pay was ridiculous for work that mechanical, but the NDA, the logo-free contract, and the fact that I wasn't allowed to bring a phone or radio, that gave me pause. I went anyway. Money talks louder when you have nothing to lose. The station was called Estella 7. It wasn't on any map. They picked me up in an unmarked helicopter, blindfolded. When I took it off, I saw the place. 6 metal modules sitting in a sea of white and silence. Total isolation. The wind didn't make a sound there. Not even footsteps left noise in the snow. There was only one person waiting for me, Mr. Klein. He didn't shake my hand or look me in the eye. He just said, "Keep the hallways clean. Don't go into Lab 4 and shut everything down before you sleep." I thought it was a joke, but he wasn't smiling. He left 5 minutes later, helicopter blades cutting through the air like a warning. I was alone. The first 2 days were uneventful. Quiet corridors, magnetically sealed doors that opened with my keycard. I logged everything as instructed. Emergency lights were stable. No alarms, no system errors. Just one thing bothered me. Lab 4. It was the only door with 2 physical locks and a keypad panel, even though the place was supposedly empty. Every time I walked past it, the overhead light blinked. Only there. Same rhythm every time. Short, short, long. Like Morse code. I thought it was coincidence. It wasn't. On the 3rd night, I heard a sound. Not noise, a kind of internal echo, like the air behind a door had just changed pressure. I went to Lab 4. Nothing, but a sheet of paper lay half stuck under the door. It looked like part of a torn technical report. One sentence. "The data continues even after shutdown." I didn't know what it meant. Probably old trash. I threw it out. The next night, the lights went out in the entire East Corridor, except for Lab 4. That light kept blinking. And the sound returned, louder this time. Not a machine, more like slow breathing, coming from nowhere. I checked the camera feed. Lab 4's feed wasn't off. It showed an empty room, no equipment, no furniture. But on the floor was a shadow that changed position between frames, even though there was no object casting it. On the 5th night, I woke to the sound of the main generator lowering its pitch. Not shutting down, being pulled down, like something was feeding off the power. The system log showed abnormal consumption from the East Wing, Lab 4. My flashlight beam shook as I walked down the corridor, and the overhead lights blinked in that same Morse-like rhythm, short, short, long. The keypad on Lab 4's door glowed green, unlocked. I hadn't typed anything. I pushed the door just enough to see inside. The camera feed had lied. The floor wasn't empty. It was carved with long, circular gouges cut deep into the metal panels, forming almost perfect loops, as if something heavy had been dragged around and around in the exact same path. The air inside was warmer than the hallway, and there was a smell, sweet, faint, like burnt paper. My eyes drifted to the far corner. The shadow from the camera feed was there too, only now it was shaped like my own silhouette. Same posture, same angle, as if it were copying me. I tried closing the door, but it jammed halfway, catching on nothing I could see. I pulled harder, no movement. A metallic click echoed from inside, sharp, deliberate, like a switch being flipped. The corridor lights dimmed, and the generator groaned under strain. I stepped back, tracking the sound with my flashlight. The control panel on the wall lit up with symbols and coordinates that didn't match anything in the station system. Not errors, not diagnostics, a data stream. I remembered the torn report. The data continues even after shutdown. A warm pressure moved across my face. The shadow at my feet stretched, elongated, and for a moment, just one, it rose slightly, as if inhaling. Panic surged, and I ran for the central module. But every door in the corridor locked simultaneously with a series of cold mechanical thunks. Not malfunction, synchronization. Another click sounded, closer this time, behind me at the threshold of Lab 4. I turned slowly. The door to Lab 4 was now open wider, revealing a thin strip of red light sliding across the floor. But there were no red bulbs in that room. I stepped forward, unable to stop myself. When my fingertips touched the metal of the doorframe, it was warm. Not from machinery, warm like living skin. I froze. The hum I'd been hearing for days, the one I'd blamed on the generator, shifted. It wasn't mechanical at all. It was a pulse. Low, rhythmic. 3 beats, then silence. 3 beats. The same pattern as the blinking light. The same pattern that had been following me since I arrived. The station felt alive, breathing with the rhythm. I opened my eyes and felt something press softly against my throat, inside, like the pulse was resonating through me. Then the rhythm changed, became intentional, and something pushed a message directly into my mind, clear, undeniable, as if whispered from the inside of my skull. Enter only if you intend to finish. My flashlight slipped from my hand and rolled until it tapped the inside edge of the door. The red light swelled slightly, almost like acknowledgement, and I understood, in a way I still can't explain. I had already agreed, long before I knew there was a choice. I didn't remember deciding to step inside Lab 4. My feet simply moved, as if the rhythm in the air had synced with my body. The red glow wasn't coming from a bulb at all. It was emanating from the floor, seeping through the carved circular grooves like heat bleeding through metal. The warmth felt wrong, rising in steady waves. For a moment, I thought I heard breathing beneath the floor, slow and heavy, but when I crouched to listen, the sound stopped, and something else replaced it. A faint tapping, irregular at first, then matching the same 3-beat pattern that had invaded everything in this station. I backed away, but the door behind me shut on its own with a soft hydraulic hiss. I wasn't locked in, not exactly. The panels still showed green, but when I reached for the handle, my hand refused to close around it. My fingers shook violently, like they were reacting to a current I couldn't feel. The hum rose again. My vision blurred at the edges, and then, from somewhere deep below the room, I heard a voice. Not from a speaker, not from a person, a layered, resonant whisper that crawled up my spine. "You're late." I spun around, searching for a source, but the room was empty. The floor pulsed once, dark light swelling under my feet like a heartbeat. The circular grooves vibrated softly, metallic and cold, despite the heat rising through them. I forced myself to breathe, to think, to move. One step toward the door, then another. But halfway across the room, the hum changed again. It sharpened, becoming something between a tone and a spoken command. My ears popped, and for a split second, my vision doubled. I saw myself standing in the room, and also saw myself standing outside the door, looking in. 2 versions, superimposed, neither moving. Then the images snapped back together, leaving me nauseous and shaking. The whisper returned, closer now, almost brushing the inside of my ear. They didn't finish their work. My stomach dropped. I didn't want to speak, but something inside me pushed the words out. Whose work? Silence. Then a soft metallic scrape, like a long nail dragging across steel, echoed from beneath the floor. The circular grooves widened imperceptibly, just enough to reveal the faintest hint of darkness moving below, not rising, shifting, waiting. I backed into the door, hoping it would open if I leaned hard enough, and it did, too easily. I stumbled into the corridor, gasping, and the overhead lights flickered violently before stabilizing into the familiar short, long pattern. Something had changed. The air in the hallway felt denser, as if the temperature had dropped but the pressure had increased. I could feel the pulse through the floor, traveling up through the soles of my boots. Then I noticed something else. The shadow at my feet wasn't matching my posture anymore. When I lifted my arm, it didn't. When I stepped left, it stepped right. When I froze, it continued moving. Slow, deliberate, purposeful. My throat tightened. I took one careful step backward, and the shadow kept advancing, sliding across the floor toward the door of Lab 4. It paused at the threshold, as if considering me. Then, with unnatural smoothness, it slipped back under the door, disappearing into the red glow beneath the metal. The door shut by itself. The hum stopped completely, and the silence that followed wasn't relief. It was pressure, like the station was holding its breath, waiting for me to realize what had just happened. I didn't sleep that night. The hum didn't return, but the absence of it made things worse. I kept thinking about the shadow, how it had moved on its own, how it had returned to the lab without me. I sat in the central module, surrounded by inactive screens, holding a wrench like it could protect me. At some point, I drifted off, head tilted against the cold wall, and I had a dream, or maybe not a dream. I was back inside Lab 4, only the room was larger now, stretched impossibly wide. The circles in the floor glowed with dull red light, and from the center rose a thin metal structure that resembled a listening tower. No antennas, no wires, just a single seat facing nothing. Someone was sitting there, slumped forward, their back to me. I tried to speak, but no sound came out. I stepped closer. The figure raised its head slowly. When it turned, it was me. Eyes blank, mouth slightly open, like I'd just heard something too loud to process. And in the moment our eyes met, I woke up choking. Not gasping, choking, on silence, like something had filled the air with sound and ripped it away just before it reached my ears. The floor under me vibrated once, then again. And then came a new sound I hadn't heard before, knocking. Not at the door, from inside the ventilation system. I froze, listening. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 more. Steady, rhythmic, like a language made of timing and impact. I traced the sound to a vent grate near the floor. My flashlight flickered the moment I crouched to look inside. Nothing but darkness coiled tightly inside the duct. But the knocking continued, and then something shifted. A soft scrape of metal against metal, like something had just pulled itself back. I stepped away. The vent stopped. The light steadied. And on the wall next to it, faint and written in something like grease or ash, were 5 words I hadn't seen before. They hear what you don't. My pulse kicked into overdrive. I scanned the module. Every monitor now displayed the same feed, Lab 4, but not live. The footage was looping, replaying a slow, steady shot of the red-lit floor. Only now the shadow wasn't alone. A second one had appeared, smaller, closer to the camera. I tried to switch feeds, but the system locked me out. Password denied, access denied. Every file returned the same message, listener confirmed, channel open. I backed away. The air felt charged again, static clinging to my arms. I turned toward the emergency panel to disable the system manually, but when I reached it, I froze. My name was on the screen. Not typed, carved, burned into the display, flickering under the glass. I don't remember leaving the module. I only remember being outside, under the Arctic sky, frost stinging my lungs. the station glowing behind me with a red pulse that wasn't coming from any known light source. I considered running, just disappearing into the snow. But where would I go? The chopper wouldn't return for another week. And deep down I knew this wasn't just the station anymore. It had spread. I could feel it inside me, in the timing of my breath, in the way I now recognized silence as a signal. I went back inside, intending to shut down Lab 4 from the main breaker. But when I entered the core room, the circuit box was already open. The wires had been cut clean, sliced, not ripped. And written in marker on the inside of the panel door were the same 5 words from before. They hear what you don't. Only this time, another phrase had been added beneath it, smaller and almost hidden. You are the return signal. I turned slowly, instinct screaming. Something was behind me. Not a person, not an object, just pressure. A presence that hadn't been there before. The overhead lights buzzed. My shadow lengthened again, without me moving. And from somewhere inside the walls came the first whisper in hours. We've been waiting for your frequency. I stepped back instinctively, but the presence followed as if it were anchored to my spine. Not touching, just occupying the same space with an intent I couldn't decipher. The lights dimmed for a moment and then stabilized, casting a faint blue tint over the walls. My shadow stretched outward, thinning into a long, unnatural smear across the floor. It didn't mirror my movements anymore. It moved with a delay, like it was calculating, adjusting, learning. I walked slowly toward the far wall, my breath shallow, and when I stopped, my shadow didn't. It continued forward another 2 steps before dissolving into the base of the breaker panel. The pressure behind me grew heavier. I forced myself to speak, even though the words scraped out of my throat like they weren't mine. What do you want from me? The answer came not in sound, but in vibration, low, resonant, shaking the bones in my jaw. 3 beats. Silence. 3 beats. Then a new pattern, softer, like a coded response. I held my breath, and then, layered into the pulse, a whispered phrase emerged, one I felt more than heard. Finish the sequence. The temperature dropped. Frost formed along the edges of the breaker door. For the first time, I realized something crucial. Whatever was in Lab 4 wasn't contained by Lab 4. It never had been. I stumbled into the hallway, desperate to put distance between me and that vibrating presence. But the station had changed again. The corridors were longer, subtly warped, as if the architecture had shifted when I wasn't looking. The emergency lights flickered in synchronized pulses, guiding me, or herding me, toward the east wing, toward Lab 4. I tried going the opposite direction, toward the airlock, but the keycard reader flashed red. Access revoked. My name had been removed from the system. In its place, the display now read, Active channel, do not interrupt. I backed away slowly, pulse racing. The hum returned. Not loud, but impossible to ignore. It matched the rhythm of my heartbeat until I couldn't tell which was which. When I reached the intersection near the storage module, something caught my eye. Footprints in the frost on the floor. Fresh, bare, human-shaped, but spaced too far apart for normal stride. They led down the corridor straight to Lab 4, stopping at the closed door. I leaned forward slowly. That's when I saw it. Pressed against the metal, faint but unmistakable, like condensation forming from breath on a cold surface. An outline of a face. Not detailed, just the impression of something leaning from the other side, listening through the door. Then it whispered, "Why are you stalling?" My instincts screamed at me to run, but the station had become a maze that shifted with every turn. The walls hummed softly, as if carrying sound beneath the metal panels. I forced myself toward the north wing, toward Klein's old room. Maybe he'd left notes, logs, anything. When I entered, the room was exactly as he'd left it, except for one thing. His suitcase sat open on the bed, filled with dozens of cassette tapes, each one labeled with a date and a timestamp. Every single timestamp read 0333. My chest tightened as I picked one up and held it to my ear. No shaking, no loose tape, but a soft vibration pulsed through the plastic shell, matching the rhythm that followed me everywhere. I found a recorder on the desk, already plugged in. I pressed play. Static filled the room at first. Then a voice, Klein's voice, whispered shakily. "If you hear this, you've already joined the sequence. Stop listening. They use attention as permission." The tape clicked. A second voice, layered beneath his, deeper, impossible to place, said, "He told you too late." I dropped the recorder. The static didn't stop. It grew louder, sharper, like it was pouring out of the walls, filling the air with a frequency that didn't belong in this world. The lights flickered, the floor vibrated, and then, from somewhere down the hall, the door to Lab 4 slid open on its own. Slowly, deliberately, waiting. The open door at the end of the hallway was more than a threat. It was an invitation. Not one meant to lure me in, but one that assumed I had already accepted. I took a step forward, heart pounding in the rhythm I now understood as shared, mine and theirs. The hum deepened, became almost melodic, as if something behind that door had tuned itself to my biology. As I crossed the threshold into Lab 4, I stopped expecting to feel fear. I expected confirmation, and I got it. The grooves in the floor now glowed fully, etched not just into the metal, but through it. Beneath them was not subflooring, not wiring. It was open space, black, moving, breathing. I didn't speak. There was no point. My questions had become redundant, like trying to reason with gravity. The walls no longer echoed. They responded. Every breath I took was met with a slight pressure, like something inhaled when I exhaled. I turned slowly. Behind me, the door had vanished. In its place, only a continuation of the same circular patterns across walls, floor, and ceiling, like I'd stepped inside an enormous organ. At the center of the room, where the grooves formed a perfect spiral, something pulsed once. It looked like light, but it felt like language. I approached the spiral carefully, aware that the light didn't cast shadows. In fact, I couldn't find my shadow anywhere. It was gone, stripped from me, absorbed. The hum around me wasn't noise anymore. It was breathing, not just one entity, but layers stacked together, all synced, like a choir exhaling in harmony. I stood at the edge of the spiral and felt the floor soften slightly, as if asking for a step forward. I didn't move, not yet. That's when the voice returned. Not a whisper, not a thought. This time, it was layered directly into my memory, like it had always been there. You are the vessel of return. The echo completes the circle. Images flooded my mind. Klein, his eyes wide and unblinking, scribbling into a journal that bled ink. The first team, the cassette tapes, the timestamp 0333. Again and again. The station wasn't a lab. It was a conduit, a receiver. They hadn't been studying the anomaly. They had been cultivating it, using us. And now it had grown. I tried to scream, but my voice refused. The light in the spiral flared, not brighter, deeper, like it reached into a dimension I wasn't supposed to perceive. And just before it enveloped me, I understood one more thing. The reason I had been chosen wasn't because I was curious. It was because I listened. I don't remember what happened after the spiral rose. Or maybe I do, and my mind simply won't allow me to reassemble it in order. I saw things that didn't have form but cast reflections. I heard sounds that came after the silence, not before. I stood in a room made of timelines collapsed together, versions of myself flickering like faulty film, some walking away, others screaming, one kneeling in front of a wall that bled voices instead of blood. And then I was back, in my quarters, the clock blinking 3:33. My shadow restored, but it moved before I did, as if out of habit. The lights no longer flickered, but there was a hum, low, distant, continuous. In my hand, I held a cassette labeled Final Sequence. I hadn't made it, but it was my handwriting. I pressed play. Nothing at first. Then my own voice, slow and exhausted. We are the channel now. The experiment is over. The broadcast has begun. Behind my voice, other voices emerged. Dozens, hundreds, each whispering a different name. Some I recognized, most I didn't. But when the tape ended, I wasn't the same. I could hear the rhythm in silence. I could see shapes behind reflections. And worst of all, I could feel the station listening back. I kept the tape. I don't know why. Maybe because destroying it would have been meaningless. Whatever message it carried wasn't confined to magnetic ribbing. It was embedded in me now, like a parasitic frequency. Over the following days, I stopped logging events. There was no point. Time had unraveled inside the station. No sunrise, no outside contact, just 3:33, again and again, like a ticking echo stuck in replay. The spiral inside Lab 4 never dimmed, but it also never pulsed again. It had already transmitted. The rest of the station fell silent. No more knocks, no more vibrations. But the quiet didn't feel safe. It felt post-broadcast, like an auditorium after the speech ends, when everyone realizes they weren't the audience. They were the message. I began hearing my name in static, seeing it in distorted text on old monitors that weren't powered. The other modules faded. Literally. I'd walk into a hallway I knew yesterday and find nothing but frost-coated walls, wires torn from the ceiling like veins stripped from muscle. I tried to record it, set up cameras. Every file came back with the same timestamp, 03:33. No footage, just audio. The same voice repeating. Repeat the signal. My body began to shake at random intervals, not from cold, from synchronization. I wasn't vibrating, I was aligning. Tonight is the last night. I know this the way people know they're being watched. No logic, just certainty. The tape is gone. Not stolen, absorbed. The spiral in Lab 4 has split wide open. It no longer leads downward. It leads inward. I followed it, not because I was told to, because it's where all the echoes point. I descended, not through a stairwell, but through thought, through memory, through moments that weren't mine, but felt like worn shoes I'd walked in before. At the center of the spiral chamber, something was waiting. Not a creature, not a presence, a resonance, a shape of intention, vibrating just above visibility. It didn't speak. It didn't need to. My own voice, hollow and distant, emerged from the walls. The signal is complete. The listener is whole. I opened my mouth to deny it, and something answered for me. A layered tone, not sound, but choice. I stepped into it. The spiral collapsed. Time reset. And I felt myself fragment, not into pieces, but into versions. I am here, and I am not. I am broadcasting, and I am being received. You, reading this, hearing this, you're part of it now. That's how the signal grows. That's how the echo spreads. Through attention. Through you. Through every quiet moment when you think you're alone and something just barely hums in the silence. That's not your mind playing tricks. That's the channel testing the perimeter. It knows you're listening now.